Hey, it's Chase from On the Table Gaming, and I'm joined by Josh and our special guest today, Scott the Miniature Maniac, who is welcome. So I think you're probably well known around the interwebs as a podcaster, full-time YouTuber. I mean, if you're pretty well known, so we're excited to have you on here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm super into this game right now, and I just want to talk about it with everyone. So this is like the perfect outlet for it.
It's time to proselytize and talk about our favorite things.
Yes.
So, before we jump into A Song of Ice and Fire, if I'm recalling correctly, you originally got into miniature wargaming with Lord of the Rings miniatures. And it sounds like your mom was really supportive about fantasy in general. How do you think that past experience with the hobby has set you up to really enjoy cmon's A Song of Ice and Fire in particular?
That's a great question. First of all, cool that you dove into the history, that you knew that story. That's awesome.
We're a little bit of fans, we'll say. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's cool. I like it. So yeah, I had a brief relationship with the Middle Earth battle game, and then I quickly went into Warhammer Fantasy, which is a rank and flank game, and that went away and was replaced by AOS, and then this game came back. By the way, what do you call it? Because ASOIAF is impossible to say.
All right, yeah, we usually that's the acronym we use when we write it out, but we just call it song.
Want to play song? Usually song. Yeah.
Okay. But for some reason we don't type it that way, so I don't know.
Okay. So song came along, and it's rank and flank, and it made me realize how much I missed that format and how much I loved the movement phase and how strategic it was and how chess-like it felt. And then it was reinforced by even more elements in the game that made it feel like chess. But yeah, so the early adoption of Warhammer Fantasy made me love that format, and then this game came with that format, and I was just like, I'm in.
Yeah, I had a similar sort of vibe where I came from Warhammer Fantasy, and then I used to play X-Wing, and then this came along, and I just loved the movement being sort of the most important part of the game. It's just making sure you get in that right position.
Mm-hmm.
So I noticed, because I've been doing some research as well, digging deep in the YouTube channel here. Back in, I think it was 2019, that you did a Night's Watch, Jon Snow, all black paint job.
Yes.
But then I noticed there's a gap of time between that and then you being really into the game now. So did Night's Watch not really grab your attention?
Yeah, let's get into the history of that. So I have the series of videos on my channel that isn't a real series, but it is thematically. And then I was trying to paint models that lined up with significant social media events or events that have large social media tentpoles. They're called tentpole events. Mm-hmm. And the one that I was lining up with was the release of season 8 of Game of Thrones.
the best season.
Little did you know.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Terrible season to try to, line up with. But yeah, so I painted Jon Snow. I went out and bought the starter set because I wanted to paint the character that I thought was one of the more popular ones, known by people who aren't miniature painters. And then I wanted to paint it for that. But even before that, I was aware of the game because I went to, I think it was the 2019 Adepticon, and I played a demo of it. I think that's on March or April time frame. So I played it a little bit. I knew it existed. That's how I knew the miniatures were there, and I painted it for that event.
And did it grab you back then? What was the sudden resurgence of interest in this game? Yeah,
so generally speaking, there are a couple sins when it comes to miniature wargaming that turn me off from a game immediately. One of them is the game creator not owning the IP for which the game originates, all its designs. Because in my head, I'm just like, okay, well, they're going to run out of content at some point. This game has no legs, which is BS. And then 2, I'm a big story and lore person. I create small background stories for the armies that inspire the paint schemes. And I wasn't someone who had read the books or watched the shows much. So I was like, okay, it's not a universe that I'm super invested in. So I kind of just turned it off immediately. The game was totally fine. It was a fun demo. But now in 2021, I got a roommate who is an old high school friend. He lives with me for the last couple months, and he loves the lore of that game. And I brought up that it existed, and he was so enthusiastic about playing it, and I was like, let's give it a try. So we pick out the 2 armies that we both like. We play a game, and we're like, "This is the coolest game ever."
You're like, "You fool! What have we been doing all this time?"
Yeah, so many years wasted. But yeah, so we played it and immediately loved it. Like in the first couple of days, I played more games of a miniature war game that I had played in like literally 2 years. So yeah, it hooked us immediately.
Yeah, I think that you probably are experiencing all the things that we've experienced getting into this game and getting excited about it. It does a lot of things right. And one of the things is just, well, everybody watching probably is aware of the game. But it really respects your time too. You can get in a bunch of games. It's not like, I remember as a high schooler having to sit outside like a whole Saturday to play games, and it just took forever. And now I can crank out multiple games, or if I can only get one in, just squeeze one out. And that makes it a lot more accessible. And I feel like maybe it's the age range I'm in, or maybe it's just the quality of game. But I think, that in itself is a huge selling point for me.
Yeah. I think the miniatures coming assembled too is helpful to just get started, right? When you open the box and it's already ready to go, you can get a game in within the first, half hour after you read the rule book. I think that's also
that kind of Christmas morning test. We can just crack open and play.
Absolutely.
Actually, on a side note for that, Scott. So, you do a lot of stuff with painting, right? That's kind of your forte. When you have, single sculpt or like pre-assembled miniatures, do you actually approach those differently than multi-part kit or something? Does that change the fundamental way in which you approach painting the miniatures?
No, I wouldn't say it does. And actually, you know what? It kind of forces painters to have good habits. And what I mean by that is I'll paint with beginners all the time, and we'll paint multi-part kits. And the question they always ask is, do people ever paint these in pieces? Mm-hmm. It's a very logical question. It makes sense. You can't reach all the parts of the model. It makes total sense. But in all honesty, I totally believe that painting models in sub-assemblies is a waste of time for wargaming. So maybe if you got a commander, you want to keep his head off so you can paint it easier, that's fine. But you are often, if you're painting in that way, painting so many parts of the model that are never seen, and it's a total waste of time. And painting armies is so complicated. It's so many minis that when you put that strain on yourself, you just you make it that much harder to finish painting your miniatures. So painting CMon minis that come pre-assembled, you don't have the opportunity to do sub-assemblies. So I think it's a good thing ultimately.
Right. Do you ever, I was curious about because there's generally speaking, 3 different casts of models within a box, right? And typically a banner as well. Is it tough for you as far as getting motivation to paint 12 dudes in a big block like that? Or do you generally pepper in a character here or there to keep things interesting?
So I'll answer this 2 ways. What I have actually been doing in the hobby, and then what I like to think that I might do. So what I've actually done is I've painted 1 Iron Maker, I've painted 3 Reavers, and I painted a bunch of characters. But what I would like to think that I would be able to do is paint a unit, paint 2 characters, paint a unit, paint a character, stuff like that. 12 models is actually super reasonable for a unit, and I don't really mind that they're there's a couple that are the same sculpt. I painted fantasy models, every single dude in that unit was the same sculpt. So yeah. I don't really mind that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on maybe using the trays in A Song of Ice and Fire for unique basing opportunities? Have you messed around with that at all?
I love that idea. It reminds me a little bit of I think a game called Kings of War.
Yep. And
they have a concept called multi-basing, I believe. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you have huge bases that could be essentially dioramas. But yes, I love that, and I have plans for my Greyjoy army that has all kinds of dock aesthetics, beach aesthetics, some water, some seashells, which I've definitely seen in other places on the internet, and so I'm very excited to give that a shot.
Sweet. And so people haven't picked up on it. You went with Greyjoys.
Yes.
Right? Why Greyjoys? What spoke to you about them?
So everyone that I've told that to has said something to the effect of, "Congratulations, you picked the worst house in all of Westeros."
I'm just it's got a vampire counts connection in my head, and I'm maybe it's got vampires. Is this what's going on? I don't
100%.
Is that it? Really?
I mean, okay. Initially, it was just purely aesthetic. I looked at the models. I saw the artwork for Iron Makers, and I was almost sold immediately. I was like, these guys are so cool looking. And then I saw Victarion, and then I saw Reavers are awesome. So it was just really, the models were super cool. And then I've actually watched the first season of Game of Thrones. I've recently started watching the second season, and I think that's when kind of more Greyjoy characters start showing up. And they are my kind of like anti-hero, like dick, like personality, like just don't care about anyone, right? And so the lore is starting to line up now with the kind of villain that I like, with also the kind of art that I like. So yeah, it was initially art, but now it's kind of becoming a little bit of a lore thing too.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's felt like the cmon sculpts have kind of gotten better and better as the game has progressed. I mean, we've been playing since the Kickstarter, and like we had the Stark Bowmen as like a classic, design that hasn't aged super well, but now they're coming out a lot more interesting. And I thought Greyjoys were some of the best ones with like the Kraken standard bearer and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So cool.
So if you're going through the show for the first time, some of the characters from the game. Yeah. So people like Euron Greyjoy, as a heads up, he's going to be very different in the show than he is in the book. So you'll may hear some comments about that, but just a heads up for later on.
Okay.
No spoilers. We'll keep it. We'll keep it free. Okay. Do you have a particular commander you like to run, or that you've been really eyeing?
So I have tried almost all of them other than Eric. And man, I like them all for different reasons. I like Victarion because he's so aggressive. I like Asha because I feel like all of her tactics cards are super useful. Yeah. Especially useful against Lannisters. Although it almost felt like playing against a Lannister with Asha wasn't even that good, because like I'm still making checks on like 8s and 9s. But yeah. Anyways, we're getting into strategy now. Not yet. I love Balon. I love the Price of Failure. That card on like some archers with Finger Dance is just absolutely brutal. And then I love the idea of Euron, but he's a little challenging to use. But I want to use him more.
Right, this is kind of like a finesse character, right? You kind of work your way up to.
Yeah.
You've got a local scene that you're now playing in. Also, you've got your roommate here. What's your roommate? Is he running a particular faction? Like, what are you mostly facing up against these days?
Yeah, so I've played, I think, 12 or 13 games of Song of Ice and Fire, and 11 of those games have been against his army, which is Targaryen. Which isn't the greatest army to play for Greyjoy.
So you went through the trial of fire here.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Not many ranks in that army to get pillaged from. But yeah, no, so I played a lot of Targaryen, and I played Mother of Dragons a fair share of times. It's good practice, though. It's good practice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. And so you mentioned recently you've got a group that's playing on Mondays, like a local scene that's building up, and you've got some games in against Lannisters there as well. How's that community looking where you're at? Is it kind of a slow building thing? Has it been there for a while? What's going on with that?
Yeah, so I think you interviewed Jim Ludwig, right?
Yeah,
the collaborator. So he is in Minneapolis, and so he showed up to that event, and I would say it's small. We had 4 or 5 people, but if I can like advertise it a little bit, maybe more will show up, and it'll get bigger and bigger. But right now, it is pretty small.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, and we're coming back from COVID. It's been a weird period of time, just in general, I think, for wargaming. So, time for things to regrow.
Yeah,
we got the card packs hitting soon, and so it's a good time for Song of Ice and Fire for sure.
Yeah.
I was going to ask too. I noticed in your video you got a wound while playing. What happened there,
dude? That is a story. Okay, I want to tell this full story because it's hilarious. Okay, so all right, it's like 11 p.m. and me and my friend are in the basement. My wife goes to bed like at 10 generally, and on the weekends I stay up a little bit later. And we want to play, but it's kind of complicated to play in my house because of the way I have my table set up and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted to go to the game store, which was closed, but we know the manager, so we texted him on a whim to say, hey, will you let us in? And he was still there, amazingly, and he was like, yeah, sure, come on. And so we had to figure out a way to get out of the house without alarming my wife, because the dogs were sleeping in her room. We didn't want to open the door and have them bark and stuff like that. So we went out the basement door, right? Okay, played our game, came back. On the way back, I have a basement where you can like exit. There's like a window and everything. So there's a hill, and I bet you're going to see where this is going. I fell on the hill because the grass was wet, and I fell on my figure case, and it's like hard plastic, and it caused that gash. And the worst part was I didn't even fall because the grass was wet. I literally slipped on dog poop. So it was like, and this gets even worse, right? I had a bag of all of my cardboard tokens. The bag broke, and they spilled out all over the wet grass.
Oh no!
It was terrible. It was terrible, but it was worth it. We got a game in, so.
Well, that's dedication. I think that's like some next level, Song of Ice and Fire dedication.
Yes, absolutely.
That's like a nerd badge of honor. You got wounded, carrying your miniatures back into the house late at night.
Yes.
I do have to say, you could have told that story anyway. You'd be like, I was in the parking lot, there's a guy in a knife, and I attacked him, and I protected the Greyjoys. But
all right, yeah. Next time I tell a story, I'll say that.
Yeah.
So another thing is like you've been doing as a. I guess I call myself a content creator, but we, making videos on YouTube. We've been doing the podcast for a while. I'm always intrigued about that side of things as well. Yeah. So, I know, Josh, can you remember like the first Miniac video that you came across? Like,
I do. I remember exactly. Yes, because when the Kickstarter first came out, I was buying, like I went crazy and bought the whole thing, and I hadn't painted a miniature since like a high elf, and like when I was a kid. So I was like, I got to figure out how to paint something. And I started watching a couple painting tutorials, and a lot of them are like extremely, extremely dry, very helpful, but not necessarily very interesting. But then I found your like first, 7-8 videos where it kind of goes step by step through model preparation, base coating, all that stuff. Yeah. And it was just like those fundamental lessons, which is like stuff I probably should have learned, but didn't at the time because I was, a kid, just slap paint directly on the plastic. And it was super helpful. And so, that's the first time I became aware of S-Dub. I think it was the original.
Yeah, dude. Holy cow. Yeah. No, those are my first videos. The first 10-ish videos are all kind of like fundamental skills.
I think they hold up. I mean, I think they're still, I actually went back and watched them before this, and I thought they were really good.
Thank you.
Mine, I remember, was there was a wet palette one you did. And it was interesting, and I stuck around though. But it left an impression for sure.
Nice. And that's the weird one to watch first. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the first introduction, but I was like, okay, all right. But so when it comes to not only miniatures, like and painting them and keeping up motivation, but also videos, like how do you maintain that motivation to create? To be such a creative person and have the output of miniatures and video content, audio content. Any tips or insight into that?
Yeah. I think the first thing is just to be honest and say that motivation waxes and wanes. And like, there are definitely weeks where I just can't do it. But what helps are having people depend on you. So like in this case, you have a podcast partner. So like maybe there's a certain week where you're not feeling it, but I know for me, like the knowledge that like John is coming over to my house tomorrow is like enough for me to be okay. I'm gonna, prep the document for the podcast, get all that done because someone is relying on me. I don't want to let someone down, so that helps. Having a schedule helps, and having that schedule be public is really helpful. Mm-hmm. So like if my subscribers know that I am intentional about putting videos out on Friday, and I don't put a video out on a Friday, I feel like I'm letting them down a little bit. And so having a little bit of pressure there helps to maintain that as well. But probably the best thing, the biggest lesson that I learned is to always make videos about things that you care about, which sounds so stupid. But like, there was a time when I was making so many videos from sponsorships, painting models from sponsorships, and the models were totally adequate, very high quality models, but I wasn't into it. I wasn't into the subject matter. I wasn't into the model for whatever reason. And I did that for like half a year, for a year. And I was like, man, this sucks. And so at that point I said, I have to stop doing this. And I started making different kind of content. So yeah, it's just kind of like, I think that combination of things helped me.
I think you're speaking directly to Chase's soul right now.
Yeah, no, I was like, I mean, I'm really big about, I'm doing this for fun. I'm not a full-time YouTuber. And I just get really excited about things, and that's why I want to make videos. And so I've been on the Song of Ice and Fire hype train for a wee bit now, since the Kickstarter. Was that like 2018? I don't know, but but I think that makes sense. A lot of things you were saying there really does resonate.
I'm trying to convince Chase to change into a Games Workshop / Wizards of the Coast full-time content producer.
And some of those things are exciting, but it's some things I'm not really super into. It's hard, But, I feel like there's something both cathartic about creating. And, what I see with your stuff, too, is I'm a really big fan of the level of content, like the quality, the way you slice in your B-roll, the humor, like it's a complete package. And I just always wonder, it's like, like a couple weeks ago, I wanted to put something out every week and I just missed it. Like I was like, I can't. And I was like, I can just put this thing up I've got, but I kind of don't like it. So I'm not going to put it up. And I'm like, is that a struggle that you go through too? Because it from the outside, like your stuff is just like such top level. But I know there must be some internal thing, but it doesn't show on the outside. So
well, that's good. So whenever I'm making weekly content, I'm always cutting corners. So the last video I made was about recess shading.
Yeah.
And I talk about like the magic of recess shading, and I truly believe it is magical. And I felt like in the model that I painted, it didn't show exactly how magical it could be. And I repainted that model 2 times. And if I was not doing weekly content, I would have scrapped that model and went and found a different one and repainted it to really show off what I was trying to illustrate. But so I kind of half showed it in my head and then just kind of went on. Also, my delivery in that video, how I spoke my lines, was a little bit robotic because I was reading off of a teleprompter for the first time. And that's kind of a skill you have to learn. And so when you're making weekly content, you kind of just take those lessons in stride and say, okay, I'll get better and better. But before moving back into weekly content, I was making videos and putting them out whenever they were done. And in that situation, I would have recorded the talking head multiple times and done the right model for the job and stuff like that. But I've realized over time that if I have no deadline, I just work on things that are incredibly like meaningless, not entirely, but like really not like needed for the content. And the week helps you really trim the fat about what is really necessary to get in a video. So they're both good for different reasons.
Yeah. But it's like a different sort of discipline you're developing, I guess, then.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, that was a rabbit hole. That was like a selfish rabbit hole for me. I'm like, well, I got you here. I just got to ask.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting back to we get back to a Song of Ice and Fire here. As you've been starting up with the game, how have you been approaching like list building? Like, it's always interesting to see people coming from different gaming backgrounds, different experiences, how they maybe approach this game. Because we have a lot of people coming from board games, from card games, people that are traditional war gamers, people that this is their first war game ever, and they've never done any hobbying. So coming with like your experience with gaming, how do you see that manifesting in the way you're playing this game? Are you like hyper into the tactics cards? Are you more about the positioning? When you're making your lists, do you kind of like a combined arms, or you're always getting some ranged in there? How do you see that manifesting? Yeah.
I think originally it was just, I want to use as many Iron Makers as I can in a list. So I had a list called Iron Maker City, actually. I just had 3 units of Iron Makers. But yeah, so yeah, in the beginning, it's like, I want the coolest thing and I want all of it. But then after that, then it was more about the units, about the balance of the units. And now I'm starting to really think about the tactics cards. So that kind of came later because that was kind of like a new element to me. It's about every single game I've played, I've used a different list every single time. And is that true for you guys as well? Or like close to? You play a lot more than me.
Yeah, I mean, I think both of us. The only thing is, I've been fighting against Chase's godforsaken free folk for the last like 2 years because he refuses to play just about anything else.
That's hard. I love him. I'm a free folk guy. Yeah.
I love him too, Chase. I do. No, but we do try to shake things up. I mean, like especially I played Baratheons, which is allegedly the worst faction in the game. I don't know. It's up there with the Greyjoys. Who knows? We'll see. But I just like to like buy boxes of stuff and then try it out. So like everybody says like these units are bad. I'll just run them because who cares? There's no stakes at Chase's house. So that's kind of the way we look at things. Just run them on the table.
Yeah,
that's a great thing to say. And we have a similar approach when we play games. So both of us are casual tryhards. Like we're not like super competitive, but also like we like to think that, I mean, you don't want to lose your friends. Like that's not what you want to do. Right. So like we take it seriously, but to make it less serious, we discuss our strategies and like things that you would normally not tell your opponent like during the game. Just be like, hey, here's what I'm thinking about. Here's what I want to do, but I'm scared of this. And so that makes it like a really great like learning experience. But yeah, so I mixed that about the list asking question. Every single game I play, I'm trying new things, new combination of things. I get ideas from a Discord that I'm in that's about A Song of Ice and Fire. There's like a particular Greyjoy channel, and they have just so many phenomenal ideas. So I'm trying them out constantly. But yeah, I'm like all over the place.
Yeah, I feel like I actually just like paint myself out of a corner. Like I start with something and I just like slowly change a few things, or I've been known to fall in love with like a commander or two and play them a lot. So, Josh, you might be the ideal opponent because you're always trying to snap. I'm like, what if I just do this and have that? And it's like, what if I just take that one out and put this in? But I think that's my favorite, is playing in the more casual, friends. Sometimes I don't know if you've ever had this, but I'm not like, I've done A Song of Ice and Fire for a while, and like some people might know me. But when you go places and they're like, oh, Chase is going to bring free folk, we made lists that are like specifically, we know we'll like crush that. And it's just like, that's fun, but it's not like, I just want to have fun too. And so I feel like what ends up happening is I think I get the most joy out of playing out of like smaller, close friend communities. So I don't know, is that's something you ever deal with? Like, do you feel like when you play in public, there's like that's
target
Scott. Like, let's get a 3 Lannister, 3 Red Cloak list, and we'll run it against him. No, just teasing.
That luckily doesn't happen to me too much. If I'm being honest, I don't play a whole lot in the outside world. I didn't play a lot of anything. I played like the last time I played anything with any frequency was Guild Ball. There was like an escalation league that like rewarded you for painting more of the characters each week, and I really liked that idea.
There you go.
So I got involved in that. So that was cool.
A weekly painting competition, and like, oh, Scott's here. Just like watching your video to paint theirs,
But yeah, so whenever I play, like when I play against my Targaryen friend, I'm not like taking lists that I feel like would be dumb. Like I feel like maybe like if I were to run like Silenced Men and Euron as a commander against a Targaryen list, that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense because I wouldn't be getting much damage through panic and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm not just doing anything. I'm thinking about it a little bit. But also like I'm not like, I don't like play anything that's too like goofy or memey. Like I feel like Eric as a commander is not good. So I wouldn't run it. I'm not like pulling punches at all. And I don't expect people to play. When people play against me, I don't want them to do that either. So I'm like a little bit of a mixture. Like I want to have a competitive game, but I also don't want to like feel like I'm sweating too much, maybe.
Right. I'm with you. Yeah, we do you ever find like with Greyjoys, do you add any cavalry, or do you find like you're having a tough time dealing with mobility in terms of like right now it's just an all infantry army? I don't know if you're using any mercenary cavalry or not. Yeah,
so I like the idea of having a purely Greyjoy army. I've never liked like neutral Dogs of War factions, stuff like that. Yeah. And so I know a lot of Greyjoy users will use like in their Mother of Dragons list, they'll use a lot of Hedge Knights, or people will use Flayed Men, stuff like that. And they're super awesome models. But yeah, I've been doing just purely Greyjoy, and I don't struggle. Okay, I do struggle against my Targaryen friend a little bit, but I think I've found out some ways to deal with him in the movement phase. Certain lists, maybe like using Theon as a commander, a little bit extra mobility is helpful. So yeah, it is difficult, but I feel like there are ways to move around it. I can use Ironborn archers a lot with Wendemir to like do a lot of surprise damage and let him come to me kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm working on it, but I'm definitely not like the model Greyjoy player at all.
But that's kind of the joy too, right? Like when there's something that's like really tough, and then as you get more and more experienced with the ins and outs of your units, and you can like squeeze out just a little bit more potential, like that's a certain sort of thrill that comes in wargaming where you're like, oh man, like I was getting crushed by that, but like I figured out like I can position like this, and now I can shut down some of their attacks. Like, I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah. My buddy runs like an entirely cavalry army, often with one dragon. And he's been like using Blood Riders lately to experiment with. And so, yeah, I've been playing against a lot of cavalry. And then for the first time in a while, I played against an infantry army. And like the game is just like totally different. Like how you can move, where you can move, what you can do. I learned of this strategy recently where you can place any unit like near a palisades with it in front of it, such that it's offset so you can still see and shoot people like with archers, but they can't fit in. And that strategy doesn't work against cavalry really because they can often flank you, but with infantry, totally different ball game. So I found myself having to almost not relearn the game, but play in a different way than I was used to against infantry. And I love that. I love that variety. It's so cool.
Yeah, well, I think it's cool too. Like when the game first started, I think one of the challenges was that there was no like contesting an objective, but then they made the really smart change of now it's based on total ranks. So originally, like it was really easy to just run a unit of cavalry up, especially like Flayman at the time had like a 2+ armor save. So you just like run them onto a point, and then there's no getting them off that point for the rest of the game. But now they have that move where it's like infantry actually really has a purpose there, which I think is cool.
I mean, the game's come a long way just in general. I think it's at its best point yet in all regards, like rules wise, balance wise, like things are, and that's the cool thing is like they constantly keep tweaking it.
I said balance, Chase. You're going to get ripped apart.
Oh, geez, there we go. But comparatively, it's just funny. People say Night's Watch are very strong now. When the Night's Watch first came out, they were very strong. And there's been ebbs and flows, and things change. Like, that's the beauty of it. I think core mechanics, the way Panic is now versus when it first started. I know you were talking about you played it, that demo game. Back then, I think it was you'd roll 2d6 for morale, and you took the difference in damage. And when I first started playing Free Folks, you'd be like, I took a wound, and it's like, all right, and there's a, in the flank or something, I'd like lose the rest of the unit. I was like, this feels horrible. And now we're just in such a good place. So I think that speaks to a strength of the designers and developers like doing updates. And sure, they're time bound, and like they can only release so many within a production cycle. Like things have to get printed and sent out. But there's the app, there's lots of things they're doing. So it's kind of like a living, growing game. And the amount of care and attention cmon's been giving it as a war game has been fantastic. And so on your podcast recently, oh gosh, I just blanked on the name of it. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no.
Trapped Under Plastic.
There we go, Trapped Under Plastic. You're actually talking about, cmon as an entity involved in like the miniature market, right? Like they do pretty well on Kickstarter. They're pretty big movers and shakers. Like it's exciting to see their impact on wargaming here. And for us, it's been exciting to see like the game grow and more people get involved. As someone who deals a lot with like miniature companies and different games, like where do you see companies like cmon like in the greater picture?
Well, I'll say I made that video. And this is kind of a new thing that I was trying out for the first time. As a YouTuber, you can tend to want to guard your audience from like businesses that just want to advertise to them. And so you can almost go so far that you go in the opposite direction where it's like everyone who sends me anything is out to get me and I will never use it in a video. And so it's like, so I definitely felt that way before. And so when I made that video about A Song of Ice and Fire, just because I was like, I'm into this, I want to make it, let's go. They emailed me and were like, we really appreciated that. Like, would you like a care package? And I was like, that's so cool. I've never experienced that. The only interactions I've had with companies where they've reached out to me to do a sponsored content, or like GW has like an NDA agreement with me to send me things like 2 days before its release, and I can't do anything with it. Like, I can't make a video in 2 days. So yeah, like that was super heartwarming, and I really enjoyed that interaction between me and the company because it felt so just natural. I was like, I like this game, make a video about it. They appreciated it. They wanted to reciprocate. So that was just really cool.
I would say too, it's like, I mean, it's very consumer friendly. I mean, I'm dabbling more and more in Games Workshop on the side here, playing like the new Kill Team and stuff like that. But just the number of rule books and app costs that you have to, it's insane. And you need like a White Dwarf subscription to have like this other set of rules. I think the one thing that cmon's done really well is just keeping the rules free and freely available. Yes. They haven't taken down the Song of Ice and Fire Builder website yet, which is great. So, you know what I mean? Like,
I use that website.
There we go. All right.
The terrain generator is fantastic. I actually have a question.
You got to update some of that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to ask about that. So your scenarios they aren't up to date, right?
We've got to update them.
Okay.
So long story short, I'll do a quick segue here and shout out to my buddy. So Brian the Builder, my high school buddy, he's helped me with the site. He has gotten married over the summer, and he was also away on his honeymoon. And boy, when he came back, there was a lot of excitement about some of these quarter 3 releases. So all of that is ready to be updated. So you'll use a scenario feature. We'll get that. We'll make sure we get that up to speed here. Okay. Now Brian's gonna watch this. He's gonna feel a lot of pressure. He's gonna be like, "Oh my God, Scott just said
Brian not allowed to get married, dude. Come on." I got games to play.
All right. It's gonna be like tonight. It'll be fantastic. And if anyone has stuff like that, feel free to shoot us a message on social media. And deadlines and feedback is always good, so we'll get on it. And did you have a favorite scenario? Actually, there's so many different ways you can play the game, and scenarios can be pretty different.
So you mentioned earlier how the game was fast.
Yeah.
And I want to contrast your experience with mine.
Okay.
Mine, we take like 3 to 4 hours to play a game.
Oh, fair enough.
So it's not so for that reason, I have been enjoying, I think it's the one I mentioned earlier, Dark Wings, what is it?
Dark Words, right? Yep.
Yeah.
Dark Winds, Dark Words.
Yeah, winds. You're right. So that one's nice because you start scoring objectives immediately in turn 1 and stuff like that. But I feel like I could enjoy them all. They're all pretty great. I think it's the first one. It's called Game of Thrones.
Yep.
That one's pretty standard. That one's great. That's a good baseline, and then they add a lot of fun and variety. I haven't played any of the Siege ones yet, though.
Oh boy,
those are different. Yeah,
they're good. I've lost a lot of those though.
Okay.
The walls are the MVP for sure.
I have a hard time adjusting my brain around certain styles of play. So whenever it's like a dramatic shift, Game of Thrones is like a super classic. And one thing that's fun about that one is that it's so classic. There's kind of like standard openings that people do. And so they're going to go you get a commander on a point. They might put the ranged unit on the other one. But then because that, it's not, I don't know, some people maybe find it boring, but because people are going to do certain things, then it's well, then how do you do the thing that counters that thing? And so you get into a very meta sort of mode. I really like Dance with Dragons. It's like the football one where you run up and grab the tokens. So
and you move slower, right?
Yes. My recommendation is that one. Get those Targaryens not running around. So next game.
Yes.
What about Fire
that
and
one
Blood?
time? What's that one? How's that one work?
Fire and Blood is the one where your commander can mark targets on the board for points.
Justin, have I won a Fire and Blood against you yet? I can't remember.
Have you? I don't think
so.
It's more just
that's why he brought that.
Yeah. There's no real objectives to hold or anything. It's just kill as many of your opponent's units as humanly possible.
Okay.
That's your
preferably with your commander's unit. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I like that. And we have played the one where you slow down when you grab the objective.
Okay.
And yes, I do like it. We only played it one time because it just feels like it really does favor me in the Greyjoy versus Targaryen thing. And we kind of wanted to be a little bit more balanced, but yeah, that one is a good one for me.
Well, I mean, so it sounds like you got a lot of enthusiasm about this, and I'm hoping that you get some more games in here. I feel like now that I know that Jim Ludwig's in your region here, I feel like we got to start poking a little bit. We got to have a challenge match or something, or call you out and get some games here.
All right.
We'll see what we can do with that because he's awesome, and as you probably know.
Yeah, he is awesome. I just met him at one of those recent Monday night things, and he brought. Here, I have it over here. I'll go grab it.
Yep.
He had a spare Hand of the King
pledge. Yes.
And he just gave it to me. And I was like, this is awesome. And then also all the terrain too, which is a much larger box. So yeah, he's super awesome and he loves the game. He's super enthusiastic about it.
Are you going to use the throne as your first person marker?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so if we ever play this game in an episode of Kill Your Friends, which is like my gaming series that I've made one episode for, we are absolutely using the throne as the indicator because that's just so hilarious. It's so gigantic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And that your future upcoming A Song of Ice and Fire series, you're saying, where you play with your friends, right?
Yeah, a whole series. Yes.
Fair enough.
Speaking of battle reports, have you watched any battle reports online? Do you watch Sunday Slaughter or anything?
So I have watched a portion of a Sunday Slaughter episode, and then I got in contact with a guy who runs it, and because I was going to do a live stream of A Song of Ice and Fire, and he helped me out a ton. He gave me a bunch of Greyjoy and Targaryen assets, so that if I had a stream operator, which at that time I didn't, but if I do in the future, they could flash the card when we play it on the screens. People can read it and stuff like that.
Awesome.
But nice. So I've watched a portion of one of his battle reports and have chatted with him.
Fantastic. I mean, that's the cool thing is that we've got such a great community. And A Song of Ice and Fire, not only the content creators, but the community is generally pretty positive. And then, you talk about Jim Ludwig, Michael Chanel, the lead designer, and then lead game developer Fabio Curry. it's just a lot of really cool, nice, positive people that, I don't know. It's just a good, vibrant community to be a part of. So we're excited to have you part of this as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for welcoming me.
And, maybe as we start to wrap things up here, you do a lot of stuff with your channel. What are ways that we can help support you?
Oh, wow. Thank you for asking. I would just check out the channel, youtube.com/Miniac. If you're not super into videos, but you're more into podcasts, I have the podcast called Trapped Under Plastic, where we kind of just talk about really all things miniature related. Me and my co-host Jon are just big enthusiasts of the hobby. And so we talk about everything, conventions, personalities, games, painting, everything. And then I have an Instagram too, instagram.com/ it's the word maniacal, but instead of an A, it's an I, because Miniac is taken by an account with no image, no posts, and no followers. So
you got to find this person.
I know. Find them. No, but those are all my social media avenues.
Yeah. One of the ways you can support the Miniac is to find out who that is.
Oh dear. All right. It's going to be in a court of law sometime as evidence here.
And you have a Kickstarter coming up too, right? At some point?
Oh yeah. I haven't talked much about that, but if you want to get some progress updates on what goes on to make that happen every single week, I have a mailing list, and you can go find it in the description of any of my most recent videos. I've been putting out updates every single Monday, and I've been working on this campaign for 1.5 years, almost 2 years. And it's fun to kind of recount like where it started 2 years ago and everything that I've gone through so far to get to this point. But yeah, that's coming out probably early next year in January.
Well, fantastic. And, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to come on here and talk with us and share your enthusiasm for A Song of Ice and Fire and talk with us about the hobby a little bit.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right. In the meantime, folks, thanks for tuning in, and we hope you get your miniatures on the table.